I now welcome architect Mun Summ, founding director WOHA Singapore, to present. Thank you.
This technical breakdown. I was here in November, and I talked about new values in architecture. But today I want to talk about slightly different things. It's about self-sufficiency. Why I decided to choose the topic of self-sufficiency really is because I think the way we're going in the world, where there's so much challenges and so much dispute happening, it is necessary for us in some ways, our countries and our cities, to think about how we can be a little bit more secure and protected and be resilient against the challenges that we are all facing. So the notion of self-sufficiency is a topic that have always something that we have in the practice been thinking about for quite some time. And in our book, Garden City, Mega City, which we wanted to share our ideas and our strategies with anyone who wanted to know in 2015, we did talk about various things. And here you can see here in this Layering Cities, the chapter on how we think about cities and how we think about the bigger scale. And here a few things are important, which I'll talk about and refer to in the few projects that I will show. Multiple ground levels, both ends, is something that I think the idea of what the building can do and how the building must perform a lot harder. And as we scale up into districts and into city, we can try and push for the idea of self-sufficiency in terms of energy, in terms of harvesting water, have enough greenery, and even production of food. And how buildings can do this is something that we have always been quite preoccupied with. High density, high amenity is an interesting one, and I think we have put it to very good use in our building in Prague, where it really is about high density but equally high amenity. And the other one that I think is quite relevant here in today's topic is the inverted skyline, in which the city, a master plan, can actually do a lot to create self-sufficiency in energy, which I will show you a little later in a sort of a unbuilt project, but then we also realized it in the master plan in Singapore. Planting cities is something I won't go too much about because I think it's quite obvious in our projects. Breathing cities is something about passive strategy. And one that I would like to talk about a little bit would be the horizontal breezeways, which is one that we have adopted in the Prague University campus. Rating cities is something that we have sort of thought about, what sort of indexes and ratio and data that we can collect that actually we can actually put to very good use to start to formulate thinking about larger scale and how we can actually convince city planners, the government, to come along and think about these new values, think about these new indexes that have transformative and catalytic effects for a built environment in the city. For every project that we do, you can see these are some of the ratings that we use to measure our buildings, and some have got quite dramatic impact, and particularly the green plot ratio. Some of our buildings does, after collecting the data out of it, which I will show a little bit later, we can start to think of cities as rainforests, how cities can actually perform services like ecosystem services, regulate temperature, generate oxygen for us humans in the cities. But what we really like to do with each project is to think about the building as a different typology, as a new typology in today's climate. And I think Brock University campus was a very good one, where it is, I think for me, we consider it as a very radical rethink of a building typology. But the topic of this self-sufficiency city came about when we were asked to look at a master plan in Singapore to create a new housing estate for 250,000 people in Singapore. And it was in a sort of a tertiary forest, a sort of military land in Singapore. And we wanted the idea of how we could actually cocoon and retain as much landscaping as possible. At the same time, think about all the other systems, clean energy, food, keeping biodiversity and all that. And how could we make our master plan work hard enough to actually keep all this intact and to be able to actually support the master plan in the new built area. So the idea of this inverted skyline came about where traditionally you think of skylines in cities as beautiful bar charts and how you admire the needle buildings and the tall skyscrapers. For us, if we want, in the tropics, if you really wanted to sort of think about harvesting energy, the roof is the best place to harvest clean energy. So the idea of inverting it, where we allow porosity, we can allow nature and landscape to pervade the ground level, but to actually have a very unified horizontal datum on the roof as one that we can actually collect solar energy was a very radical rethink of a city skyline. So the notion of this self-sufficiency city has actually got 4 layers. One is the lower level, which is the subterranean and ground level, which is really used for servicing, logistic and infrastructure, and also for nature. Then we have the parkland layer where we create another ground level where we allow a seamless connection of people and how people would use it as a park and how people would actually move around horizontally. Then above that we have the residential and the workplace layer, and topping it off with a rooftop canopy layer, and beneath it a commercial vegetable farm that could actually feed the entire population of 250,000 households. So in terms of a plan, you can actually see it's one that has got these 4 layers, but the one that I would highlight is the rooftop canopy layer, where we actually try to unify the roof and have more interconnected structure to actually support a very large solar canopy. So with this master plan, we were able to create a zero energy new town where there's sufficient clean and alternative energy to actually power all the energy needs for this new town. And as a section, you would see how it would actually cocoon forests, and then at the same time, at the top is a sort of a very unified and sort of a connected roof canopy that will support not only the solar farm, but also the vegetable farms beneath it. And then on the parkland layer, you can see it caters to pedestrians, cyclists, and a sort of people mover systems to connect the various housing blocks together without any other vehicles. And then on the rooftop layer, we have the solar farm, and also underneath that, the vegetable farm that would actually be large enough to support the entire population of 250,000 households. So as you see on the roof layer, how it's unified, but further away you can see the very standard sort of a normal bar chart skyline in the rest of the other areas that was not conceived as this self-sufficient city idea. So in terms of this idea as a self-sufficient city, we can scale it. And we tested it on the Singapore Pavilion in the Dubai Expo in 2020, and where we actually have this full solar canopy at the top, which has got enough solar panels to actually produce all the energy needs of the pavilion for the entire period, and enough to actually to create a zero water as well, to actually draw water from the ground, purify it, and to use it within the pavilion itself. So, but what is actually quite important was when we were asked to create Singapore in Dubai, which is in a desert area, we were wondering how do we actually bring the tropical, lush, verdant gardens of Singapore into a desert area. And that's when I sort of know that landscaping thrives very well between the temperatures of 10 to 40 degrees. But anything beyond 40 degrees, it stops thriving. It literally would just stop, and it would just hibernate. So the idea of creating the energy for the plants through an indirect way, having these solar panels, but using grow lights that gives all the energy it needs, but minus the heat, actually will allow the plants to thrive. So we were able to create an oasis in the garden through this indirect way of generating the energy for the power of the earth, to generate energy for the plants. So this is the pavilion, and it's made up of actually 3 inverted cones, where all the cones were actually dressed in more landscaping, vertical and horizontal landscape, and even in the ceiling. And one of the principles that we adopted here was to have 50% of the land area used for landscaping and planting real big trees. And with all this creation of landscaping, we were able to bring the temperatures down by 10 degrees. And what would normally be over 40 degrees in the desert, it was less than 30 degrees. And the plants continued to thrive very well. And not only that, the people actually feel a lot cooler when they visited this pavilion. And it proved to be very popular in the expo because everyone wanted to seek refuge away from the sun. So there was a very interesting experiment for us, which to a certain extent verified our notion of this idea of self-sufficient city. So it's quite enjoyable, and we actually adopted dry mist fans to actually have a very dry misting, but actually with fans that actually causes the water droplets to evaporate very quickly, and that you actually have this cooling effect on you as you walk past them. And it's something that we actually adopted quite a lot in public spaces in our projects in Singapore now. So as you can see here, the ground is all full of landscaping, vertically as well, both inclined and in both directions, and also in the ceiling, where we actually have grow lights hidden in the ceiling that we can actually have creepers climbing on the ceiling so that we can actually conceal the grow lights a little bit. But as I was mentioning earlier that I do like data, these are the data that we have been collecting and calculated. In terms of the green plot ratio, we have created almost 170% of the replacement of green. Total landscape area is so much. It's completely energy self-sufficient, water self-sufficient, and also in terms of organic waste, it was fully 100% recycled and treated on the site. And there was a perceived lowering of temperature by 6 to 10 degrees. But what is good was that we started to compare the ecosystem services the landscaping actually does for humans, for this pavilion, as against the typical bungalow in Dubai, and also a desert vegetation, which is the native landscape of Dubai. And you can see how it actually performs against this other. So in terms of solar heat reduction, you can see it actually reduces by almost 655%. So this is actually a very good rethinking of what you can actually rethink about existing typology, and you can actually create something that can be exciting and innovative even in the desert. So another project that I wanted to show is also rethinking of a typology of a vertical building. And this is based on the idea of the vertical stack typology or club sandwich typology. And here we were interested in creating boutique environments. In this case, this was a hotel, to create 3 boutique type environments and hotels within a vertical stack. Theoretically for us, we can keep extruding this stack, sort of a stack environment vertically as tall as the structure can actually provide. So in terms of a section, you can actually see almost 7-story stack, creating a very nice sort of urban scale, and being able to stack it vertically, and having the entire footprint as a sky garden, sky terrace, where we can actually create a team landscape within it. In this case, we considered this a biomimetic approach, where we wanted to adopt on the ground level a forest team with a very large sort of a bioretention cascading pool. And then on the 5th level, we wanted to recreate a beach. And on the 11th floor, we wanted to create the Botanical Gardens of Singapore. And then on the 18th floor, which is the top terrace, we wanted to create a cloud-like environment with using different palette of materials, dry misting, and then the very top layer, which no one sees, is a full footprint of solar panels that actually generate almost 15% of the energy usage of this vertical tower. But what since then I've learned from this project is that with the reduction of costs in PV panels and the improving technology and new technologies of PVs vertically, we can almost create a 0 vertical tower as well now that can be affordable, and that in terms of returning capital costs, we can actually recover within 5 to 10 years. So this is something I think to note, is that we should consider every single surfaces of a building as energy producing, and that we can actually make our buildings work a lot harder now. But what is really quite interesting for us is that we've been studying all our buildings in all this sort of voluminous buildings that we have been doing, like the BRAC University and this one. The amount of external surfaces and internal shaded surfaces is almost 50-50. And in many cases, the shaded surfaces are a lot more. And the amount of solid massing versus void mass is also 50-50. So that's something very interesting. If you look at a typical skyscraper typology, where it's a core with which is with a hermetically sealed curtain wall, you only have 100% external surfaces, and it's always 100% solid. But if you want a tropical building that is very shaded and sheltered, that creates a nice environment inside, or indoor-outdoor spaces, you almost need to think of a building like a cheese with a lot of voids in it. So I think this is something that I think people from different climate zones, where it is completely required to be completely sealed to minimize the surface area. In the tropics, it's just the reverse. We want to create a lot more voids, and we want to create a lot more shade. So I think this is something that we do need to pay attention, that when we do design for buildings beyond what we are familiar in a certain context, we do need to really account for the differences. Here again, we do it for all our buildings now, is to collect our data and to compare it against what the site would be as a pristine habitat. In this case, for this hotel, this development, with all the sort of a creation of green replacement, we are able to provide actually quite a substantial ecosystem services. So if you compare against a case of another hotel, it's business as usual. In terms of carbon dioxide sequestered, it is almost 4.8 times. And in terms of sort of a removal of pollutants in the air, it's actually almost equivalent to 58 one-way trips from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. And in terms of solar heat reduction, it's actually 6.5 times. For us, all this data is very important, and we've been collecting it, and we have been given grants by the government to evaluate our work because they realize our work has got importance in reformulating policies for the city and how we can actually tackle some of the challenges we are now having with the existential crisis, climate change, and with this data, we can rethink and reformulate all our planning policies and our building policies. So maybe we would just pause for a while, or rather I pause for a while, and you can enjoy this video. Lots of beautiful existing trees, very large trees. And then there is this underground MRT station that creates a campus boulevard that brings people and connects people all the way to the waterfront. But what is really sort of doing the most work in this building, this whole district, is really the subterranean. As in the inverted skyline idea, the subterranean is actually future-proofing a lot of the things that will happen in the future. And what is really quite nice is that all our ideas and principles are embedded in all the buildings here, and that we were able to actually cocoon a large amount of secondary forest in this place. But what is really important is that the subterranean has is doing important infrastructure such as the district cooling, pneumatic waste systems. It has the MRT, the bus interchange, and a lot of logistic from truck deliveries into drone delivery and robotic deliveries for all the tenancies here. And also at the same time, what it actually does is that it frees up our ground level to be entirely a park. We have 1 square kilometer that is car-free here. So in terms of the section, you can see almost a car-free environment at the top, but heavy lifting in the subterranean, where this is a TOD, a transit-oriented development. But what's really nice about it, you don't see any traffic whatsoever. You just revel in a nice park environment. So this is what it is today. You can see the large cocoon forest, which is really quite large, and you have all the buildings that are interconnected in the basement. There are no roads in this master plan. They're all underground, interconnecting between parcels and buildings. And as you arrive from the MRT stations, you come into this huge, large tropical community spaces that can actually have 3,000 to 5,000 people in this gathering space. And here you are connected to almost all the buildings, and including the campus boulevard, which is a car-free space. A car-free promenade, I meant. And here you can see the sort of a pedestrian promenade that connects the campus, the business park, and the university. And dotted along it are very crucial, critical social and economic enablers, we call them, where there are libraries, there are childcare centers, food courts, and so forth, so that they can actually activate all these public spaces. And because we are cocooning a lot of forests, we were able to create elevated walkways to connect the buildings. And here you can actually see interconnectedness between buildings, creating a new datum in the mid-level so that the academia and university communicates and collaborate very closely. And in all the buildings, we have created very new spaces within it. The fifth workspace, where it's all informal and all outdoors, relying less on energy. Then effective sort of multiple ground levels, creating large spaces within buildings again. So in terms of the strategy, where we are very passionate about the idea of thinking about cities without cars. Of course, we do have to have cars and vehicles for servicing, but we like the idea of cars to disappear. And in future, cars will be not driven by humans, they all be self-driven, so they can actually drive and drop people off where they want it, and then they can park themselves. Basement in future will not need to have mechanical systems to light it or ventilate it. Basements are purely for sort of mechanical systems for automated self-driven vehicles and for logistics only. And with drone delivery and automated robots to deliver things, all the systems can now do not need such a activated basement anymore. So what we did was that instead of your regular traditional city block, we opted for a super block, and we connected all the buildings underground so that you can actually have logistic and vehicular connections underground but not above ground. So here you can see the future of mobility is really about putting cars below, autonomous vehicles. On the ground, really, it's all personal mobility devices, air drones, delivery, flying around buildings. And actually, we did mark out all the drone paths within the district for all these drone deliveries and drone taxis in the future. But at the end of the day, the ground level really is a community, people-centric spaces where we don't have vehicles, but we only have people using bicycles and electric scooters, if they are permitted in Singapore again. But one thing we wanted to also ensure was to actually ensure a better collaboration between academia and industry. We created a new datum that connects all the buildings together and to allow a different access for the industry, leaving the ground level very open for the public to use. This business district really is embedded in a very mature housing estate in Singapore, in the northeast corridor of Singapore, and that while people can use the ground level, the people in the buildings can be connected at an elevated level. Here, in the terms of the plan, you can see the collaboration loop connects 15 buildings all together. And if I had to cut the section across the buildings, this is what you'll see. And this is what you can actually see now. It's just beginning to finish. Building by building, we are now getting the certificate of completion and being fitted out and being used. So the red bridges are the collaboration loop that connects all the 15 buildings together. And this is the university library. It all connects and comes right into the heart of the whole district, with very interesting large convention spaces and actually amphitheater spaces within it. And then the heart, it pumps out again with all this circulation space connecting all the buildings, including how it will actually connect across above roads and the drop-off area. And then it comes to some of these major nodes where there are large informal spaces within it. Here you can see through one of these sky garden portals, you can actually see the big cocoon forest and then the buildings across. And all these canopy walks are also doubling up as classrooms, and they are very informal in nature, but it's sort of fitted out with all the furniture, ceiling fans, and Wi-Fi. So what we actually did was, because of the density of this place, it's actually a very dense sort of part of Singapore with a lot of public housing. We really wanted to make sure that it was also a very nature-centric place. And because of we documented the biodiversity before, and we're now measuring whether we have been able to retain all the biodiversity within the site. So I think we have so far been fairly successful from what we can see. Even the monkeys are still around. They love to play in this bioretention ponds. And you can see buildings that are actually just next to the forest. We were able to ensure that the forest is kept and that we make the contractors respect the landscape here, and that they are actually fine if should they, accidentally kill some of the trees. And then spaces within it too, we have got a lot of landscaping to create this biophilic work environment. And even shelters too are now embedded with planting, and even the roof plantings as well. And all the walkways that are connecting all the different buildings. What is really quite nice about Singapore is that we do recognize that with climate change, we do need to provide as much shade and shelter for moving of people from building to building. Here you can see all these walkways are also filled with green roofs. And then all the buildings has also got a generous amount of sort of sky gardens as workspaces as well. And how this canopy walk is also the classrooms, and actually built above the trees. So let's have a look at the video. So the last project that I will talk about is even bigger. It's to rethink Singapore. And what would Singapore be like in 2100? We are asked to think of Singapore as a brown city and how we can actually imagine Singapore in the future. And I think the ideas I talked about earlier were all part of the idea of how we imagine Singapore. But when we think about Singapore in the 22nd century, things will be quite different. I think we will have a better world by then. By 2050, with all the existing technologies and of how we actually can be able to scale up existing technology to cater to the carbon emission, like low carbon steel, low carbon concrete, and having a very sort of green energy everywhere, the built environment is very different. So, and I think we can then start to think about other things, such as nature. So, we were very concerned. This project was really started even before COVID, where we were suggesting and proposing, not say proposing, but postulating that the way we live and work will be very different. We will be working, learning from home through digitally and online. And as it turns out with COVID, that all came true. What we are also proposing too is that we should go with a 50-50 city, where 50% is built up and 50% is actually nature. And this was an inspiration that comes from Edward Wilson, Half Earth, where he suggested and he calculated what it requires for human species to survive is to keep 50% of the planet reserved for nature. So future mobility, I talked a little bit earlier, it will be very diverse, and that we will not need roads anymore. We will have a very diverse way of moving around city. And also, when we talk about 50-50 city, we also talk about rewilding cities, where parts of the cities are no longer should be used by people, but actually by nature itself. So this QR code, if you want to see a longer version of this video, it's almost 15 minutes long, but I will just show you a very short one. The last one, actually the idea was 15-minute cities, but vertically. And I'll just end with this last short video clip.
Thank you so much, Architect Mun Summ, for your spectacular presentation.